Hey, LaCheryl, how you doing? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at your work here. I was reading your writing and everything makes pretty good sense here. Um, so let's go ahead and jump right over to the examples, which I have up here. I've got your examples up right here. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so the main thing I'm seeing really is that it doesn't seem like you're applying much by way of blending modes. And we can see that in all of these as the image is pretty basic. So I really think you should experiment with blending modes here and also with type techniques. Um, so there's a couple of different areas in the classroom I want to draw your attention to. So let's go to the announcements. And in the announcements, we go to Welcome to Week 3. That announcement right down here, there's over 200 type tutorials for in Photoshop right here. And since this week we're concentrating on type and blending modes, I'd like to see you really start to try to develop some interesting type techniques other than basic default type. As we see in all three examples here. So really try to push your typography to a level of creativity that is indicative of experimentation and further development other than just basic drop shadows and things like that and texture patterns. Okay, and then I really think it's super important to start experimenting with blending modes. So blending modes are really super important in Photoshop, and you get some crazy creative effects. Let me show you something really quick with blending modes. Okay, so I've got this, and I've been using this example. So we get our basic Photoshop file, just one layer, right? So if I select that layer and I come down to my blending modes, I'd say any one of these I select, they don't do anything, right? Look at that. Oh, that's weird. They're not doing a thing. Okay, why not? Because you have to duplicate the layer. Right now, you have to give the blending mode something to interact with, and that's the layer below it. So you always have to use a layer in conjunction with the blending mode, ergo blending, right? So we want them to blend together. So you can create a gradient layer and use blending modes with the image below it, or you can use a pattern and use blending modes. You can create all sorts of different types. You can use one image and use a blending mode to another image below it for some interesting effects. And you can also use the same image. So for example, if I duplicate this layer right now, okay, now you can see I go through, now all of these blending modes are working, right? Look at that. How cool, right? So you can imagine if I were to duplicate this layer and add this exclusion blending mode, then duplicate it again and add another blending mode. Whoops. So now you can see, now we're getting, so we have that layer, okay, that layer, and you can even go in and change different blending modes. So let's go to this one and change this one too. Okay, look at that, just crazy stuff, really super creative stuff, right? So my recommendation here is to go ahead and experiment with blending modes and also experiment with textures and also with typography. And again, those tutorials are located in the announcement. There's over 200 of them. You know, don't go too crazy, as it seems like it's a pretty conservative album covers. All three of them are. So think about that. Okay. Let's take a look at these just real quick by way. I would not, that drop shadow is really, really distracting. And also placing the type over this image. This typeface is difficult to read. Plus it's in all caps, which makes it even more difficult to read. Plus it's over an image, which makes it even more difficult to read. Plus there's an unusual word here, shoddy, which makes it even more difficult to decipher. So for that reason, I would definitely not add the drop shadow. I would definitely pull that away from the image itself. This one, I think this one's good. Just let's work with, you got some good type effects here, but let's really get creative with the blending modes associated with the image. And then this one, I think also, again, blending modes, and try to push your typography, get as creative as you can. Okay, so those are my recommendations moving forward. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. But first and foremost, I would like to see a lot of experimentation, a lot more experimentation with your type and especially with blending modes. Okay, as I said, again, any questions at all, please feel free to let me know. I'll be glad to address anything that comes up. All right, thank you so much, LaCheryl.